Reincarnation is a deception, and I am going to give you a tool to prove that it's true. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory and let you know how the devil set me up to receive reincarnation as a truth, why I thought it was true, and then I'm also going to tell you how I began to question whether it was true or not. I went through two things, one that I realized on my own and one that someone else challenged in an online reincarnation forum. That really hit home. And then I'm going to explain to you how I finally learned a tool, and I'm going to share this tool with you so that you can use it. It's a very powerful tool, important probably for every person who pays attention to their dreams. And that's going to conclude this teaching here. So when I was a freshman in high school, now before I got saved, I sometimes had a prophetic dream, or I sometimes had a dream that was interesting and I remembered when I woke up. Now I had a dream, and in this dream I was told that when I woke in the morning, if I would open my geometry textbook and turn a few pages after the place where I had ended the previous day, where I had worked an assignment the night before I went to sleep, if you will just turn a few pages, you will see the name of this French mathematician, and that was actually you in a previous life. And go open the book and you will see. I woke up in the morning and thought, oh, that can't be true. Well, the book was there. I opened it up, and I opened up to where I just finished this assignment, and I turned 1-2 pages ahead, and there in the margin is this little blurb about a French mathematician. I forget his name, but it was like La something at the end. You know, it was like his last name started with an L, and I was like, okay, wow, you know, that's very cool. That's very interesting. But I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't consult anyone. I didn't share with anybody. I just thought that it was very kind of strange. And I had no idea what to do with that, so I just kept it to myself. But every now and then I would think about it, like, wow, could that be true? You know, could that be true? So this was a false dream. Again, later I'm going to tell you how to discern if a dream is false or not. But I didn't have any idea that a dream can be false or real or anything, but it was just mind-blowing for me. I was raised Catholic. We're taught that none of that stuff is real. It's just you only receive that stuff if you're crazy. So I had no way of handling that or processing it, none at all. So I went through my life not worrying about that, just doing what high school kids do. Then, come my senior year, one day I'm standing outside on the ramp that leads up to the door of the class. The drama teacher comes out, and she just looks at me, and just with the most greatest, kindest love and warmth, she just looks at me and she says, you know, you are an old soul. You are an eighth soul. And it was just so friendly and nice. I just received it. I was like, yeah, I'm an eighth soul. I'm an old soul. That just sounded good to me, and it was this nice compliment. I was like, okay, that sounds great, you know. She's like, you're too mature. You're too mature for your age. You know, you're above these other ones. And I was like, yeah, I am. So see, this is how it works. You know, there's this appeal to an ego. Now that's going to come. That understanding is going to become important later on. Now, after high school, I joined the Marines. As I'm finishing my time in the Marines, I get saved, and immediately I start having dreams every night. And the Holy Spirit's telling me, you need to write these dreams down every morning, and you can't read any books about dreaming. You can't look up stuff. You can't go read books about dreaming. You can't look up dreaming books and get into all this. You just need to write everything down for 2 years. And after 2 years, you can do whatever you want. So I said, okay. So I started writing down all these dreams, and I began to realize, you know, every now and then I'd have a dream like, hey, this dream is very similar to this other dream, and they kind of go together. And then there'd be a third one, and pretty soon I'd have a set. And I started to have different dream sets that were all about one thing. And many of those things became important events later in my life. So through dreaming, God was preparing me for an event and helping me that I would understand what that dream meant. But in some, there were some other dreams, and they began to be dreams that I began to understand were past life reincarnation. One of these was about a Frenchman in the 1700s. Another was 300 BC Japan. And another one was in Mayan times. So in all these dreams, I'm a warrior. I'm like this great swordsman in France. I'm like, I'm not nobility, but I know nobility, and I go to the balls, and I go to the big things, and I go to the the fancy estates, you know, I'm around all there and I have nice clothes and I have these 2 different swords that I can use at different times and I just defeat everybody in duels and whatnot. So, so again, notice how there's this appeal to ego, right? I'm not just a mediocre swordsman, you know, I'm not a guy who loses the sword battle. I'm an awesome swordsman, right? So, same thing in the Japan dreams, this guy, I would go and where there were like a group of thugs terrorizing a town, I would go in there and I would beat these other guys and liberate the town. And but even, you know, there were even teachings in the dream. Like I'd liberate a town and then the people would just be afraid that they would want me to be their ruler. And I'd say no. And so there's like a whole lesson in the dream, like people don't want to be responsible for their own lives. And it was all very interesting and fascinating. And there's like storylines and everything going on. But when sometimes, maybe not every time, but sometimes when I'd sit and I'd think about those dreams, I'd have this feeling like there's something wrong with this. There's just something wrong. And just from inside me, there was something telling me like, something's just not right. But I couldn't put my finger on it. But after a while, first let me get to this. Because this is one of the reasons that a lot of people believe reincarnation dreams are true. So I used to go to the public library. So this is like the mid-90s. And some of these were in the first 2 years where I wasn't allowed to read a book about dreaming. But what I did do is I went to the library and I would find these books about old military uniforms and Japanese, different eras of Japan, Japanese history and the samurai uniforms. And I'd make sketches when I woke in the morning of a headdress or of a breastplate or something, of a French sword. And then I'd go to the library when I had time and I'd find that, you know, everything in the dream belonged to 1700s French era. Everything in the Japanese thread belonged to the 300 BC. I was like, wow, you know, there's no way that I can know this. You know, I don't know this information. I just don't. You know, it has to be true. It has to be true. And so I began to convince myself that it was impossible because I didn't understand the origin of the dreams. And I'm going to get to that. I was really deceived by the accuracy and the detail in the dream about how everything was time specific and time appropriate. So I really began to be deceived and I became fascinated with these dreams. And not every week, but every couple of months, I would have another dream about one of these timelines. And again, there's like a storyline that's building and things. You know, it's interesting. The people who are making the dreams, the entities that are making the dreams, are not idiots. They know how to keep you interested, and because they want to drag you along. So, and again, everything's always goal-oriented. It's always goal-oriented. And the goal in this case is, if they can deceive you into thinking that this life is maybe just throwaway, or maybe not so important because you're going to have another chance in the next life, then why would you take it seriously? Why would you think, well, if Jesus is the only way, I better find out the truth about that? If Jesus is the only way, then maybe living holy is a real thing, and I need to stop putting spells on people. Maybe, I need to do that. So remember, the devil's works are goal-oriented. So the reincarnation deception is that you won't really take your life very seriously, and more so that you won't take the need for salvation seriously, because salvation only comes through Jesus. So if someone doesn't receive Jesus and they die without having done that, then everyone dies, and at some point there's the resurrection and then the judgment. And so if you don't have Jesus to say, okay, this person's sins, their wrongdoings, and their shortcomings are all forgiven because he's a friend of mine. He's the only defense attorney that you're going to have when God sits on the judgment throne. So if you don't have Jesus, you have no hope. Jesus is the way, not a way. Not all roads lead to heaven. Only Jesus. He is the way. Anyone who tells you different is working for the enemy knowingly or because he's deceived into believing that that's true. So another thing I've been learning in dreams is that time is not real. And reading the Bible, I realized that at some point time ceases to exist and time ends. Even in this world on earth, like that's something that will happen. So I thought, okay, if time is not real, if God has one day in heaven, then he can see all of time. He knows the beginning. He knows the end from the beginning. He can see all of time. Then time is not real. And I also began, because of some time loops that I saw and recognized in dreams, I realized that time was not real. So I began to ask myself this question: if time is not real, then why is it that all of the other lives that I see in dreams are always past lives from previous times. And why don't I see any dreams from the future? That seems wrong to me. Like the odds just don't add up. I should be seeing some number of dreams from the future. Why don't I have any future lives? As soon as I began to make that question, to pose that question to other people, I began to have what I started calling a future life pre-call. Not a recall, but a pre-call, right? Because I wanted to get some cool terminology in my thinking, right? So I was like, okay, and I began to have this dream in which I was, a number of dreams in which I was a space marine. So our spaceships would ram enemy spaceships. There'd be a gap and we would leap through these holes torn in the hull of the enemy ship, and we'd go hallway to hallway fighting, bloody melee battles for every intersection. And in one of these dreams, we're going through, and I would team up with one guy and we would go forward and we would like make a barricade of bodies and fallen equipment and crates and whatever we could find, and we'd put up our laser Gatling gun, machine gun, just spinning around, shooting off hundreds of lasers per second, it was amazing. And there were like thousands of people dying in these battles. But I would never even get a scratch. And suddenly in one of these battles, I'm like shooting everybody dead, and I'm just like, how am I not even scratched or bruised? Like this doesn't make any sense. Before I get to this pre-call dream thread, I was in a forum and someone writes me, says, why is it that all of you people who have all these reincarnation dreams, in all of your dreams you're always somebody, elevated. You're always the high priestess or the king or, the general of the army or something. Why are you never like the cook or, the busboy? Why is it never that? And I thought, yeah, the odds for that just don't make sense. So this was the second thing. So the first thing that made me start questioning it was, I guess the first thing really was this feeling that I had that something was off, but I couldn't identify it. And I wouldn't even go to Christians and I would start to ask. I'd say, I think that some dreams are false. They say, no. There's only dreams from God and that's it, Or they'd say, dreams are just, random firings of the mind, which I absolutely understood and was completely wrong. And so I just politely listened to those responses. But so first I had this inkling. The next I began to wonder why there were no future lives seen. And then I started having them, but I was still suspicious, like, the timing of that just doesn't seem right. But then this guy says, why are all these reincarnation dreams always in which there's something great? And it was true. In my case, I was, an amazing samurai. I was a crucial, minor captain in the battle at Trafalgar, sniping, I was a sniper and I was killing all these guys, and then I'm this fantastic swordsman in France. I'm never like a schmuck. Why is that? I thought, yeah, that's true. Like, well, it just seems like if everything's just random, like why wouldn't I be a schmuck a couple times, but I'm always somebody really awesome. And because in this life I had been a United States Marine, those dreams really were designed to appeal to me. So for example, if you're a New Ager and you're having reincarnation dreams, I'm going to guess that there's something that you would like to be maybe in this life, something like an amazing practitioner of witchcraft, or the high priestess or something, or somebody, who has influence to help a lot of other people, So it's going to be something that will appeal to you, that you will receive. Now, amidst all that, they may toss in a couple lives in which, it's something else. Like I've had lives where I lost and was killed in a battle against the Mayans, the Mayans defeated my people and I was captured and taken prisoner. So, there are a couple of dreams which you lose, but still, even in that dream, I still was kind of an awesome guy, right? So it's all feeding into your ego, because the devil wants to promote you up, because this is something also that will put you against God. So you go to bed, and you're one kind of person that you are, or whoever you are today, you can go to bed tonight and have a dream that you're somebody super special, and wake up tomorrow with this unearned confidence, which really is just arrogance. I think, I'm somebody better than I really am, because in my other lives, I'm somebody super duper. So there are multiple ways that the devil will try to bring you into trouble by separating you from God with arrogance, as much as he can, whatever God will allow, and then by deceiving you away from understanding that you need Jesus in this life, not in the next one, in this one, because you only have one life. You're going to live one time, you're going to die one time, and that's it. So now somebody had recommended to me, so I finished my 2 years, and now in 1999, which is like 5 years into my dream research and my dream experience, somebody suggested me this book by a man who was a British man who lived in India in the 1800s, around the middle of the century, and this guy wrote some amazing things, and he was the first guy that I read who said that there are false dreams. I was like, wow, he had my attention like that. I knew it, I really believed there were, and now finally I found someone who confirms my suspicion. What is he going to say? And this guy said, and here's the tool, he said, if you're in a dream and you think it's off and you suspect that it's a false dream, he said, stare at a wall and the wall will disappear, and then it's a false dream. And I thought, okay, that's amazing. I'm going to try that. So now, in one of the dreams in which I was the French swordsman, there's this huge ball. Everybody's got the beautiful dresses on. I promise you, if I looked it up, all the details would have been exactly, 1700s France. So I walked past this window, and out of the corner of my eye, the window ripples like this, like as if it was the top of a lake. It just rippled a little bit. There was something wrong with this window. And I thought, wait a minute, that window just rippled like water. And I took a step back and I turned and looked at it. And now, even though it was a window the first time I passed, this next time, the bottom half is a fish aquarium. And there are fish swimming in there. Now, does that even make any sense? If you put an aquarium on a window, the sun in the daytime is just going to kill the fish. It'll heat the water and kill the fish. But this was an explanation for why there had been a ripple like water, because, there's water in an aquarium. I said, no, this isn't true. And I remember the trick. And I stared at the window to the ground outside. And everything outside looked gray. There was like nothing going on outside. No trees, no grass, no bushes, no people walking around, nothing. It was just gray. I stared at it, and then suddenly the wall fell away, and I turned and everything else was gone. All the hundreds of people that were dancing, all gone. Chandeliers gone, walls gone. There's nothing there. There's just this gray landscape, and there's like a step down to where the ball area had been. But way off in the distance, there's this huge red demon with horns, and he's got this long robe thing on. It's got like, it droops down right here. It's got red satin on there. This guy had a sword, and then there was a battle after that. Like I tried to escape, and we fought to a standstill. But that guy, I saw his face, was so eerie. But I realized, wow, that was a false dream, and behind it was a demon. I was like, okay. Now I really was starting to suspect. But for some reason at that point, you'd think I would say like, all right, it's all bogus. But I didn't. I was like, okay, that dream was false. That dream was false. But I really started to suspect. I think all reincarnation dreams are bogus. I think they're all bogus. So now, back to this space battle, right? And I realized, wow, why is, I never even get scratched or bruised. My uniform looks like it just came from the cleaners. Like something is not right here. And I just stop in the middle of the battle, and I stare at this bulkhead, and immediately it falls apart, and there's just this gray landscape, gray background. It could look like it was like a nighttime on the moon, maybe. And off in the distance, there are these two guys. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? And they said, oh. They're really surprised. One jogs the other one and points. And they're like, oh, this guy's out of the deception. He's outside of the delusion, and he's engaging us. So they walk over and they say, oh, everything's okay here. Where are your parents? And at that time, and I want you to understand this. If you're a dreamer, this is something that absolutely happens. They began to attempt mind control. So I felt something push. It pushed against my mind to accept that these people looked like my parents. In reality, they didn't look like my parents at all. They took the form of a kind of a young woman that I'd never seen before, and a young man that I'd never seen before, who were not even the appropriate age to be my parents. But the mental push is, this is not the only time I've experienced that. I've had other dreams that I realized were fake, and the demons will overwhelm your mind to accept that something that doesn't even look right is something that's real, that belongs to your life, that this is your mother or something. I've experienced that many, many times, and it's one of the ways that you can identify a false dream, that something that is presented to you as being a certain person or a certain place and clearly isn't. Like they'll put a mental push on you so you won't notice that. It's called a delusion, a spirit of delusion, right? To be deceived. That's how we talk about it in Christianity. Oh, he's deceived, right? He believes a lie. Well, how does that happen? Demonic mind control, influence of demons. So part of being deceived into reincarnation is this mind push, this mind control. So I said, no, you aren't my parents. They said, oh, yeah, you're right. That's true. So they didn't give up. They presented a new story. They said, we are the guides, we are the teachers here, and we're creating this thing. And again, this mental push. So if that was true, if they were just teachers there to help me and guide me along, why would they need to push against my mind? Because what they were trying to do was create another platform, another environment, another false dream to get me back into their system. I said, absolutely not. I don't receive you. Get away from me. And the dream broke and I woke up. And that was the last reincarnation dream I ever had, the last pre-call future life dream I ever had. The devil realized this guy does, and I've heard this testimony before, once you stop believing the devil on something, he stops trying it. Because he realizes it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of my energy, I've got to try other tricks against this particular person. As earlier I mentioned the ego, like they will format, an ego promotion is something that they will definitely use in these reincarnation dreams. It's very widespread. If you've read a number of books about reincarnation, you understand, yeah, that's a theme, that you're the super one, at least most of the time. If you have 10 past lives, in 8 of them, you're somebody special, and maybe 2 of them, you might be somebody with a minor life, but your place in your social circle is probably, even then, very important, right? And there's always something to be learned, there's a storyline to keep you engaged, to keep you focused, and not looking at the big picture and saying things and asking questions like, why don't I have any future life dreams? If I'm able to see another life through time, why don't I ever see one that's in the future? Maybe you're watching this video and you've believed in reincarnation for 40, 50 years, 60, 70 years, who knows how long. But you've never had a future life recall, a pre-call dream. Why is that? So you start to ask questions. They don't want you to ask the questions. They want you to be engaged in how important you are and what the lessons are that you have to learn. Then you still need to learn them in this life, this kind of a thing. That's kind of Buddhist philosophy, right? This kind of demonic teaching that is really designed to engage you and delay you from coming to Jesus. The enemy, that's their ultimate goal, is to make sure that you do not accept Jesus and that you don't walk in the power of Jesus, that you don't learn how to say, Jesus Christ, in the name of Jesus, I command every foul demon to get away from me. They don't want you to ever know that that is a power that they are forced to obey because they are weaker than God, because they are weaker than the angels that God sends. They don't want you to learn about that. So is a reincarnation dream true? No, it is not. And how do you prove that to yourself? If you suspect the dream is false, you look at the wall, and you stare at it, and it will fade. Now, in a dream, you will do things that you habitually do. This is another thing I learned from this guy, Fox. So, every now and then, just teach yourself to say, is this reality or not? And then stare at a wall, and keep staring at the wall for 5 seconds, and see if anything happens strange. Once you habituate yourself to do that, at an appropriate time, don't make yourself look strange in front of people you only just met, you'll do it in a dream. And if it's a false dream, it's going to fall apart. And once that happens a few times, you're going to be convinced, one, that there are false dreams. And who makes those false dreams? The kingdom of darkness, my friend. Demonic beings, evil beings, beings without souls that are trapped because they're not welcome in heaven. They are out there working against God's creation. They hate God, and so they hate those of us who are made, and that includes you, whether you believe it or not, made in the image and likeness of God. So I perceived, God gave me the perception, there's something wrong with these dreams. And maybe you've experienced that as well. Then I began to wonder, why there were no future dreams. Then I began to wonder why all of these dreams appealed to the ego. Why is every past life so appealing to the ego? Why does it just make us vain? Why are we always somebody super and never somebody mediocre or a schlep? Why am I never a schlep in these past life recall events? So those all began, and then those all began to bring questions. And then God gave me this tool through this man Fox. Stare at the wall, and the dream faded away. And then I saw a demon behind the first one that collapsed, and the second one that collapsed. I saw some entities that were clearly trying to control my mind, clearly trying to deceive me against my own will. So, and then all those dreams ended. So, are reincarnation dreams real? No, they are not. If you go to a past life recall guided therapy session and you see an old life, the same thing. A vision is created and delivered in a very similar manner. It's also a deception from the enemy. You have one life. It's the life you're living now. I hope you'll make the best of it, the most of it, and I hope that you will find Jesus Christ, because he is the way, the light, and the life, and there is no other way. Jesus is the way, not a way, the way. Without Jesus, you have no hope of being saved from hell. You have no hope of an eternity in heaven with our Heavenly Father, a God who loves us, you included, so much that he has more thoughts about you and only you than there are grains of sand in the entire world. And that's what he says in his Bible, in the Bible. So this is the man from Modesto reminding you as always to pray or be defeated.